The 1970s were a time when music pushed boundaries like never before. Radio stations held enormous power over what America heard. And when they decided a song was too controversial, it could make or break an artist's career. But sometimes, being banned only made these songs more famous. So today, we're taking a journey through 15 most controversial banned songs of the 1970s. Number 15, Love to Love You Baby by Donna Summer. Donna Summer's breakthrough hit nearly got pulled from the airwaves before it could start the disco revolution. Released in 1975, the 17-minute extended version featured Summer's sultry vocals and suggestive sounds that radio programmers deemed too explicit for daytime listening. The song's sensual moans and breathy delivery caused quite a stir in conservative circles. What made this band particularly interesting was the cultural clash it represented. Here was a song that celebrated female sexuality and pleasure, at a time when such topics were rarely discussed openly. Summer's performance was unapologetically sensual, and the extended disco mix meant that listeners were treated to nearly 20 minutes of what some considered audio erotica.
Oh, love to love you, baby.
Many stations either banned it outright or only played heavily edited versions during safe harbor hours. Some radio executives worried that the song would corrupt young listeners, while others feared complaints from religious groups and conservative advertisers. The Catholic Church even issued statements condemning the song's explicit nature. Despite the controversy, or perhaps because of it, the song climbed to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and launched Summer's career as the undisputed queen of disco. The ban only seemed to fuel public curiosity, and disco fans sought out the full version in record stores across the country. The controversy helped establish disco as more than just dance music. It was a movement that challenged sexual norms and celebrated liberation. Number 14. Je t'aime, moi non plus, by Serge Gainsbourg and Jane Birkin. Originally recorded in 1967, but re-released in 1969 and gaining notoriety throughout the early 1970s, this French duet between Serge Gainsbourg and Jane Birkin became one of the most banned songs of the era. The track featured explicit breathing and moaning that left little to the imagination about what the singers were supposedly doing. The song was revolutionary in its frank portrayal of physical intimacy. Gainsbourg, already known as a provocateur in French music, had created something that pushed boundaries even by European standards. When it crossed over to American and British markets, it caused an immediate uproar among conservative listeners and religious groups. The BBC banned it immediately, calling it offensive and unsuitable for broadcast. Radio stations across America followed suit, with many refusing to play it even during late-night hours. The song's frank sexuality and foreign language only added to the mystique for American audiences. Religious leaders condemned it from pulpits, and parent groups organized boycotts against radio stations that dared to play it. Despite widespread bans, it became a massive underground hit and influenced the sexual liberation of popular music throughout the decade. Record stores reported that customers would often ask for it discreetly, and it became something of a forbidden fruit that many sought out specifically because it was banned. The controversy helped establish the template for how provocative European music could shock American sensibilities. Number 13. Anarchy in the UK by Sex Pistols. When the Sex Pistols released this punk anthem in 1976, it didn't just get banned. It got the band effectively blacklisted from British radio. The song's anti-establishment message and Johnny Rotten's snarling delivery of aggressive lyrics made it an immediate target for censors. The The timing couldn't have been more provocative. Britain in 1976 was struggling with economic problems, labor strikes, and social unrest. Into this volatile atmosphere came the Sex Pistols, with their musical Molotov cocktail, declaring that they wanted to destroy the established order. The song represented everything that terrified the British establishment about the emerging punk movement.
I am an anarchist, don't know what I want.
The BBC refused to play it, and most commercial radio stations followed suit. Record stores were pressured not to sell it, and venues canceled concerts. The band's appearance on a British talk show, where they used profanity on live television, only made matters worse. The incident became known as the Filth and the Fury, and turned the band into national villains overnight. Government officials spoke out against the band, and conservative newspapers ran editorials condemning their influence on young people. Yet the controversy surrounding the song and the band helped fuel the punk movement and made them icons of rebellion for a generation seeking to challenge authority. The band turned the Sex Pistols into martyrs for artistic freedom and gave punk rock a dangerous reputation that attracted disaffected youth across the globe. Number 12. Let's Spend the Night Together by the Rolling Stones.
Don't you worry about what's on your mind, woman.
The Rolling Stones were no strangers to controversy by 1967, but when they performed this song on The Ed Sullivan Show, they had to change the title line to Let's Spend Some Time Together. The original version was considered too sexually suggestive for television audiences. Radio stations across America grappled with whether to play the song, with many choosing to ban it during daytime hours. The song's frank invitation to physical intimacy was deemed inappropriate for family listening, despite being relatively tame by today's standards. The censorship debate helped cement the Stones' reputation as dangerous rebels and contributed to the growing generation gap of the late 1960s and early 1970s. Number 11. God Save the Queen by Sex Pistols.
God save the Queen. She ain't no human being.
Perhaps no song caused more outrage in Britain during the 1970s than this punk masterpiece released in 1977 during Queen Elizabeth II's Silver Jubilee year. The timing was deliberate and provocative, as the nation was celebrating the Queen's 25-year reign. The BBC banned the song immediately, with Radio 2 controller Charles McClelland calling it in gross bad taste, while its anti-monarchy lyrics and confrontational tone during the Queen's Silver Jubilee led to widespread censorship. Many record shops refused to sell it, and the band faced physical threats and violence. Despite the ban, the song reached number 2 on the UK charts, though some claimed it was kept from number 1 by chart manipulation. The controversy turned the Sex Pistols into international symbols of punk rebellion. Number 10. The Night Chicago Died by Paper Lace.
When a man named Al Capone tried to make that town his own.
This 1974 hit about a fictional gun battle between Chicago police and Al Capone's gang faced unexpected censorship from an unusual source. While most band songs dealt with sex, drugs, or politics, this one got pulled for its violent imagery and glorification of gangster culture.
And he called his gang to war with the forces of the law.
Several radio stations removed it from their playlists, concerned that the song's dramatic depiction of shootouts and criminal activity was inappropriate for younger listeners. Some cities with high crime rates were particularly sensitive about playing songs that seemed to romanticize violence. Despite the partial bans, the song became a massive hit, reaching number 1 in multiple countries and proving that controversy often translated to commercial success.
I heard her pray the night Chicago died.
Number 9. Walk on the Wild Side by Lou Reed.
Holly came from Miami to Philly.
Lou Reed's 1972 masterpiece was both celebrated and censored for its frank depiction of transgender individuals and the underground culture of New York City. The song told the stories of various characters from Andy Warhol's factory scene, including transgender women and drug users.
Said, hey, babe, take a walk on the wild side.
Many radio stations banned the song outright, viewing its subject matter as too controversial for mainstream audiences. Others played heavily edited versions that removed references to sexual acts and drug use. Despite the censorship, the song became Reed's biggest commercial hit and introduced mainstream audiences to topics that were rarely discussed openly. It became an anthem for marginalized communities and helped pave the way for greater acceptance of alternative lifestyles.
He went down to the Apollo. You should have seen him where they go.
Number 8. Lola by The Kinks.
It's in a club down in Old Soho where you drink champagne.
When The Kinks released Lola in 1970, it faced BBC censorship for a rather bizarre reason initially. The BBC pulled it not because the song was about a romantic encounter between a man and a transgender woman, but because the song mentioned Coca-Cola by name, which they considered product placement. The band had to re-record the line, changing Coca-Cola to Cherry Cola before the BBC would play it. This seemed almost comically trivial compared to the song's actual subject matter, which was genuinely groundbreaking for its time. The song told the story of a young man's encounter with Lola in a London club, dealing with themes of sexual identity and gender fluidity that were rarely addressed in popular music. However, many American stations focused on the song's gender-bending storyline once they actually listened to the content. Some refused to play it during family hours, worried about having to explain the song's meaning to confused parents. Religious broadcasters were particularly concerned about what they saw as the normalization of what they considered deviant behavior. The song's matter-of-fact treatment of sexual ambiguity was groundbreaking for its time. Ray Davies wrote it based on real experiences in London's underground club scene, where gender roles were often blurred and sexual identity was more fluid than mainstream society acknowledged. This authenticity made the song both more powerful and more threatening to conservative listeners.
Well, we drank champagne and danced all night.
Despite various bans and restrictions, it became one of the Kinks' biggest international hits and helped pave the way for greater acceptance of LGBTQ+ themes in popular music. The song's legacy extended far beyond its chart success. It became an anthem for people who felt like outsiders and helped normalize conversations about gender identity decades before such discussions became mainstream. Number 7. Short People by Randy Newman.
Short people got no reason.
Randy Newman's 1977 satirical song sparked outrage across America from listeners who completely missed the point. The song was actually a commentary on prejudice and discrimination, using height as a metaphor for how society treats those who are different. Radio stations received thousands of angry calls from listeners who thought Newman was genuinely attacking short people. Many stations banned the song to avoid controversy, particularly after organizations representing people with dwarfism spoke out against it. Newman tried to explain that the song was meant to expose the absurdity of prejudice, but the message was lost on many listeners. Despite the misunderstanding, the song became Newman's biggest hit, reaching number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100.
They got no baby legs, they stand so low.
Number 6. Money by Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd's 1973 critique of capitalism and materialism faced censorship not for its message, but for its language. The song included the word bullshit in its lyrics, making it one of the first major rock hits to feature profanity that couldn't be easily disguised or misheard. The controversy around profanity in popular music was just beginning to heat up in the early 1970s. Before this, most swearing in songs was either implied or hidden in slang that younger listeners might miss, but parents would understand. Pink Floyd's direct use of profanity was seen as crossing a line that many broadcasters weren't ready to cross.
Grab that cash with both hands and make a step.
Many radio stations refused to play the uncensored version, instead opting for edited versions that bleeped out the offending word. Some stations banned it entirely, viewing any profanity as unacceptable for broadcast. Program directors worried about losing advertisers and facing complaints from religious groups and parent organizations. The song's message about the corrupting influence of money and material wealth was actually quite conservative in some ways. But the language used to deliver that message was what caused the problems. This highlighted a recurring theme in 1970s censorship. Often it wasn't what artists were saying, but how they were saying it that got them in trouble.
Get back.
Despite the censorship challenges, the song became one of Pink Floyd's most popular tracks and helped introduce progressive rock to mainstream audiences. The controversy also helped establish the precedent for explicit content warnings that would become standard in later decades.
I'm in the high fidelity.
Number 5. Disco Duck by Rick Dees.
Party the other night.
This novelty hit from 1976 might seem harmless, but it faced an unexpected ban from many radio stations. The problem wasn't the song's content, but rather concerns about copyright infringement and the use of Donald Duck's voice without Disney's permission. Legal threats from Disney led many stations to pull the song from their playlists, fearing lawsuits. Radio programmers also worried about the song's potential to encourage similar novelty records that might infringe on copyrighted characters. Despite the bans, the song became a massive hit, reaching number 1 and spawning countless imitators. The controversy highlighted the complex legal landscape that was emerging as popular music became increasingly commercial. Number 4. Killing Me Softly with His Song by Roberta Flack.
Strumming my pain with his fingers.
Surprisingly, this beautiful ballad faced censorship from some radio stations who interpreted the title literally. In an era of increasing violence and social unrest, some programmers felt that any song with killing in the title was inappropriate for airplay, regardless of the actual content.
Killing me softly with his song. Killing me softly.
The early 1970s were a turbulent time in American history. The Vietnam War was raging, civil rights protests sometimes turned violent, and there was a general sense of unease about the direction of society. In this context, even metaphorical references to death or violence could make radio programmers nervous about public reaction.
Killing me softly with his.
The concerns seem absurd in retrospect, given the song's romantic and melancholic nature. Flack's emotional ballad was actually about the power of music to move people deeply, with the killing being entirely metaphorical, referring to how a beautiful song could emotionally overwhelm a listener. The song was inspired by a poem and dealt with themes of artistic expression and emotional vulnerability.
Felt he found my letters ready.
However, the early 1970s were a time of heightened sensitivity about violence in media, influenced by concerns about everything from the war in Vietnam to urban crime rates. Some stations chose to err on the side of caution, rather than risk complaints from listeners or advertisers who might misinterpret the song's meaning based solely on its title.
Singing my life with his words.
Most of these bans were short-lived as audiences, and programmers realized the song's actual content was completely harmless. Flack's emotional performance and the song's sophisticated arrangement made it clear that this was high-quality adult contemporary music, not anything that could promote violence. The song went on to become one of the decade's most beloved ballads and won a Grammy Award for Record of the Year.
Killing me softly with his song. Killing me softly.
Number 3. I Am Woman by Helen Reddy.
I am woman, hear me roar in numbers too big.
Helen Reddy's feminist anthem faced resistance from radio stations and music executives who felt its message was too politically charged. Released in 1972, the song became a rallying cry for the women's liberation movement, which made some programmers uncomfortable.
Yes, I am wise, but it's wisdom.
Certain stations banned it for being too political, while others worried about alienating male listeners. Some religious broadcasters objected to what they saw as the song's challenge to traditional gender roles. Despite the resistance, the song became a massive hit and won a Grammy Award. Reddy's acceptance speech, where she thanked God because she makes everything possible, only added to the controversy, but also cemented the song's place in feminist history. Number 2. The Pill by Loretta Lynn. Music superstar Loretta Lynn faced significant radio censorship with this 1975 song about birth control. The controversy was immediate and intense, with the song stalling at number 5 on the country charts primarily due to widespread radio bans. Many country stations refused to play it, viewing the subject matter as inappropriate for their conservative audiences.
Your brooder has, 'cause now I've got the pill.
The song represented a seismic shift in country music, which had traditionally avoided such frank discussions of women's sexuality and reproductive rights. Lynn's direct approach to talking about contraception and female sexual autonomy was considered scandalous for country radio, which had built its audience largely on traditional family values and conservative social attitudes.
The girls in New York City, they all march for women.
Religious groups also protested the song vigorously, seeing it as promoting what they considered immoral behavior. Church leaders organized letter-writing campaigns to radio stations, and some advertisers threatened to pull their sponsorship from stations that played the song. The controversy extended beyond just the music industry. It became a cultural flashpoint in the broader debates about women's rights and sexual liberation that were defining the decade.
For all those years since I've got the pill.
Lynn defended the song courageously, arguing that it addressed real issues facing women and that she was simply singing about women's actual experiences. She pointed out that country music had always been about real life, and this was as real as it got for millions of women. Her willingness to stand by the song, despite the commercial cost, made her a pioneer in addressing women's issues in country music. The ban had an unintended consequence. It proved that there's no such thing as bad publicity. The controversy made Lynn a household name beyond country music circles and inspired other female artists to tackle taboo subjects. The song became a rallying cry for women's liberation and helped establish Lynn as one of the most important voices in country music history.
I'm tired of all your crowing, how you and your...
Number 1. Imagine by John Lennon.
Imagine there's no heaven.
John Lennon's beautiful plea for peace and unity became one of the most controversial songs of the 1970s due to its line about imagining no religion. Released in 1971, the song faced bans from religious radio stations and conservative programmers who viewed it as promoting atheism.
Living for today.
Many Christian radio stations refused to play it, and some mainstream stations avoided it during religious holidays. The song's call to imagine a world without countries also troubled some patriotic listeners during the height of the Cold War. Despite the censorship, the song became an international anthem for peace and is now considered one of the greatest songs ever written. The irony that a song about peace and love could generate such controversy wasn't lost on Lennon, who continued to defend its message until his death.
Imagine there was no countries.
The 1970s proved that controversy and great music often go hand in hand. Banned songs didn't disappear. They spread through word of mouth, underground radio, and sheer curiosity. Many are now considered classics, showing how art often outlasts the censors trying to silence it. Songs once seen as dangerous are now played on oldies stations, their edges softened by time. But back then, they sparked fierce debates about culture, freedom, and generational values. Efforts to ban them often backfired, turning ordinary songs into symbols of rebellion and giving artists a level of notoriety no marketing could buy. These battles revealed how censorship varied by region and highlighted the complex dance between art, commerce, and morality. Most importantly, they showed that authentic expression can't be silenced for long. The songs that stirred controversy in the 70s paved the way for even more daring music in the decades that followed. If you enjoyed this trip back to the rebellious sounds of the 1970s, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more music history that challenges the official narrative. What's your favorite controversial song from this era? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your memories of when music was dangerous.